and welcome to another edition of the Preacher Girl podcast. Guess what? It's fall. Ta-da! That's why I'm wearing all my fall colors today. I look like the fall festival cake in Compass. These are Fee and Kai earrings. I know you like them. Anyway, today's podcast is so near and dear to my heart. It's my favorite topic to talk about. It's my favorite topic to preach about and certainly to write about. So today I want to talk about irresistibility and how you as a preacher girl can use your God-given magnetism and irresistibility to fulfill your assignment here on earth and to make sure that you make full proof of your ministry. So if you're interested in finding out about that irresistibility that's inherently in you, it was there from the day you were born. Before you were in your mother's belly, God knit you together with parts of you that make you unable to be resisted. In other words, wherever you go, whomever you meet, they're going to see something in you that sparks joy in them, that makes them remember who God is. And I'm going to tell you today how to make that happen for you. So if you're ready, let's go. So all of us can remember that one person, that somebody in high school or college that we thought was maybe the prettiest person that we'd ever seen, or maybe had the most attention. And then we know that other person. You know, the girl that walks in the room, she's not that cute, she's not that nothing, but then everybody seems drawn to her. She has a kind of magnetism that causes everybody to turn that way, look and wonder. You wonder why she's so popular or why she's so, she's got a crowd around her. Well, that is the trait that some people like to call irresistibility, and I've named it that just because it kind of describes what I feel like every single woman has inside of them, put there by God. And so today I'm going to give you 3 short tips, 3 easy, surefire, you probably already do it and forgot about it ways to make sure that your irresistibility shines through. If you follow these steps without trying, what's already in you is going to come out and be unable for anybody to resist. So when we were in high school, when I was in high school, we played this game. I talk about it a lot, and I've played it several times myself, okay? So it's this game where we all sat in a big circle. And I went to an all-girls high school. So the teacher gave every girl 1 penny. And then we all sat with our hands open and the penny in the middle of our hand, in our palm. And so there are about 60 of us in that room that day in a big circle with a penny in our hand. And then when the teacher came and touched you on the shoulder, you got up and you placed the penny in the hand of the person that you thought was a natural leader, or the person who in the future was going to become for sure a leader. Now, and when we played that game, I was about 15 years old, and I remember sitting there with my eyes closed, hands open, penny in there, wondering who in this room do I think is going to be a leader. And a thought came naturally to my head. There was one person in there. She was full of charisma. She was very popular. Her parents were famous. I thought, well, that's definitely the person who's gonna get my coin, because without trying, she was going to be a leader. Well, one by one, the teacher went around and touched shoulders. I don't know who she was touching, but I know I could feel pennies just being dropped in my palm. And I thought to myself, I really want to open my eyes, but I've never been one to, break the rules. So I kept my eyes closed. And then when the teacher touched me, I got up and put my penny in somebody else's hand. Went back down and closed my eyes and waited, thinking that what I was feeling in my hand, everybody else was feeling in their hand too. Well, wouldn't you know it, about 15 minutes after all of this, the game was over. I opened my hand and it was full of pennies. Now you might say, well, yeah, you're Pastor Sharo. Of course, you got a lot of pennies. People knew you would be a leader, but you don't understand. When I was 15 years old, I was nothing like the person I am now. I was shy. I was definitely the poorest person, if not close to the poorest person in my class. Didn't even speak up, wouldn't put my hand up like I told most of you. Felt very insecure, and as a Christian, really didn't dress like them, didn't act like them, didn't talk like them, didn't go to the movies with them. So I felt like nobody knew me. I was an invisible. But yet somehow my hand was the handful of pennies. That has never left my mind, but it made me realize something, that it's not really about what I think about myself, but it's about what people see, what God put inside of you that comes out to the world without you even knowing, that makes you irresistible, that makes people see something in you that maybe you don't see yourselves. So if you're ready, I'm going to show you these 3 traits that you already have that God's going to use in you in the next few days to bring out your irresistibility. So the very first thing I want to talk to you about when it comes to irresistibility is alignment. Now, I'm not trying to be kitschy, I'm not trying to be all super duper psychological, but I need you to get this in your spirit. Alignment is the first step towards irresistibility. And what do I mean by alignment? By alignment, I mean you get in line with God's opinion of you. You've heard it preached, you've heard it said. I know you think that you know this already, but the fact of the matter is, the reason why most of us suffer with insecurity or issues like Facebook complexes and going on Instagram and it ruining your whole morning is because we're not aligned. We're aligning ourselves with what people say about us and what society has judged you as, and worse, what you have judged you as, instead of remembering what God has called you. Everything I teach about irresistibility I've taken from the book Songs of Solomon. And the Shulamite woman is the irresistible woman. Solomon had 900 concubines, 300 wives, yet she's the only one that he wrote a whole book about. He wrote a whole story, a love poem to her. And I've always wondered in my life, what was it about this woman that made her irresistible to him? And the first thing was the alignment. Now, aligning yourself with what God thinks about you isn't easy when Satan keeps bombarding you with thoughts about who he thinks you are or who people say you are, right? So you're doing fine one day and all of a sudden something will say, you know, you're fat, or if people really knew the truth about you, or maybe what they're saying is real, or you don't look like those people, or you don't have these things. Every day we are bombarded by those thoughts, and after you hear all those things in your head, how are you going to go out there and feel irresistible? Well, this is what I've got to tell you. When those thoughts enter your mind and enter your subconscious, the first thing you want to do as a woman is find some man or find some woman to stroke your ego. That's what we do. So we go to our husbands and we say, honey, how do I look in this dress? What are we really thinking? We're thinking, man, I'm hot in this dress. So what we want him to say is, girl, you are on fire. Instead, he says, you look fine. And then we are like, what? Fine? What do you mean fine? Does that mean fat? No, fine does not mean fat. But because we're already listening to the voice of the enemy in our head, we let that cloud whatever we could have said to ourselves about ourselves. So we've got to get aligned with what God says we are, His thoughts about you. I wrote it here. Line up your thinking with God's idea of you. In the book of Song of Solomon, you know what it says? God says, He said, you are irresistible to Him. He cannot take His eyes off of you. Do you even get that? So I'm going to tell you practically how to align yourself with God's thoughts for you when these thoughts come into your head. The first thing you do is you recognize the thought. You give it the acknowledgement. If you're thinking, man, I'm going to choose fat, okay? I'm fat. Then you recognize the thought, you acknowledge it, and you say, I think I'm fat. You might say, well, why would you do that? That's like an affirmation. No. You recognize it by saying that's what you think. You take the power away from it. Because if you let that fester in your mind, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough, or all of those things, pretty soon that overtakes you. But if you say to yourself, I know I think I'm fat, or I know I think I'm incompetent, or I know I think, and then you respond to yourself by saying, but that's not the truth about me. All of a sudden, you take the power away from that thought and you replace it with what God says about you. So you say, you know what? I'm fat, but that's not the truth about me. The truth about me is that I'm healthy. The truth about me is that I'm competent, that everything I need, God already gave to me. So what you're essentially doing, and I need you to listen to this, is you're forgiving yourself for having that thought. I'm forgiving the thought, and I'm forgiving myself for having that thought. I'm forgiving myself for being misaligned with what God has thought about me. Because every time your thought is contrary to God's thought, it's wrong. It's not the truth, because God is the truth. Jesus says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. You know how we see this in the Shulamite? Hear what she says, She says, I've worked in the sun all day tending to my brother's vineyards, and I am dark. Back then, that would have been a bad thing for her to be dark, because being fair and the fairest of maidens was a big deal. So she confesses, I am dark, but the next two words are magic. She says, I am dark, but lovely. Do you see what she did? She was irresistible, because even though she heard something that could have been a setback to her, she had a response to her own accusation, forgives herself for the dark, and says, but I am lovely. In other words, no matter what anybody else sees, I know what God thinks of me. I know who I am, and I choose to align myself with His opinion of me. So the second key to irresistibility, I love this one. It's how I've lived. It's how I want to live. It's how I pray to live on those days when I feel so low. And it's attitude. So the first one is alignment. The second one is your attitude. And it's a cliche now. It's become cliche to have an attitude of gratitude. But the most successful people in life, and by successful, it doesn't necessarily mean, as you know, the people with the most money, but the people with the most joy and the most fulfillment and the most, who can at the end of their life say, it was good, are the people who have lived lives of gratitude. It's such a big deal to understand that an attitude of gratitude is so attractive. People who are grateful for small moments rather than waiting for big payoffs. People who are focused on the things that they do have and just have an attitude that says, you know what, I may not have that, but I sure have this. It's one of my favorite things. I'm drawn to people like that. People that celebrate the little things. People that are excited about what other people might think are silly things, but they know how to celebrate small victories instead of waiting for huge milestones, because sometimes those huge milestones never happen. I always tell the story about my nieces and my nephews, and I love to buy them gifts, and sometimes, some of them more than others, because you can buy something as insignificant as anything. Like my niece Cadence, she opens a box and she finds an apple in it, and her first two words are, for me. And she thinks and she will bite into that apple immediately. Is it a big deal? No. Was it for her? Maybe not. But the gratitude that she shows just for getting that thing makes me want to go out and get her an ice cream truck or get whatever it is that she wants, because I imagine her face the minute she gets something so small. Well, that's how Father God feels towards us when He gives us those blessings that other people might overlook. If you take a moment in your day to say, you know what, everything isn't going right, but you know what's going right now? This is. I know you heard it, food on my table, friends, and a roof over my head, and family, and I get it. All those things are good. But do you ever take a moment to just say, I really am glad that I have, and you fill in the blanks, or that God did blah, blah, blah. So at night, every night before I go to sleep, it's the way I want to go to sleep. The only way I don't do this is when the enemy is bombarding my mind. But before I shut my eyes and I've already spent time with God, I count those little things, those blessings that I'm so fortunate. A comfy bed. Ladies, good sheets are like magic. A great pillow, a roof that doesn't leak most of the times. All of those things are so big to me and so wonderful, and those are just things. But when you think about the people and the friends and the family, and even if you lost friends, You know, even if you lost family, you still got somebody left. You got a PG community that even if we can't take the place of your blood family, we're here. You're not alone here. You know, we are here for you, and that's what gratitude and that kind of attitude feels like. In the songs of Solomon, the Shulamite goes to the vineyards and the grapes are green. So if you've ever tried a green grape, not the sweet ones, but green meaning they're not mature, right? The grapes are green. You know what she says? This is so cool. It shows you why Solomon fell in love with her. Hear what she says. She says, I came to the vineyard and the grapes are green, but I can smell them. In other words, I can't pick them, but just the fact that they're there, the scent of promise is so wonderful. Oh my gosh, do you get that? Solomon saw that in her. An irresistible woman is one who is seeing her present circumstances and so hopeful that God will do what he says he can do. But even so, we don't waste time watching the grapes ripen. We know that it's there. We're grateful for what God has already done. We're grateful for where we are right now. And we're grateful for the promise of grapes that will ripen in a harvest. There's always, no matter what, no matter how harsh your situation is right now, there is something to be grateful for. That attitude of gratitude is irresistible to people. But most of all, it's irresistible to God. Before I share with you the final point about irresistibility today, I just want to take a moment to invite you one last time. Today is the final day to register for my online exclusive event. It's an irresistibility conference and workshop. There are going to be so many insightful things, freebies, giveaways, and just a time for us women of God to just get together in a setting. I'll be there live with you to talk to you, to pour into you. Some other PG girls that you really want to get to know will be there at the conference as well. It's completely online. You can do it in your pajamas from your home, and you don't want to miss this event. But it will be an exclusive event only for those who have pre-ordered the book Irresistible, because we're going to go through that certain things together. Today I'm giving you 3 of the points that come from that book. It's a book I wrote a decade ago, and I've just revised it to be re-released, and you girls will be the first ones to ever get it. Today is the final day. Registration closes for good today, so if you haven't done so yet, I need you to click the link in the description box today. If you can't find it, go to pastorsharo.com irresistible and you will be able to sign up. Tomorrow it will not be available, and it's not for sale. It's free of charge to those of you who pre-register for the Irresistible book. So the third one, so far we've done alignment and attitude. The last one I want to share with you is altitude, altitude, and it just means how high. Everything you do in life as a woman, as a man, as a boy, as a girl, everything you do will, the highest level that it can ever attain to is not a success. It's not a PhD. It's not $1 million in your bank account. Those things are goals, but those things are not your highest level. It's not perfection. It's not superiority. Do you know what is the highest thing that you can attain to no matter what you're doing in this life? The answer is love. That's it. Love. Love is your highest achievement. If you are going through your life as a faithful person, that's cool. Faith is good. In fact, without faith, it is impossible to please God. If no matter what life throws at you, you're still hopeful, that's awesome. It's good. But it's still not as good as love. The Bible says it this way, and now abides these 3, faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Now, what do I mean practically? How does that serve you? Let's say, like, you know, you're a preacher girl, or you're in ministry, or whatever field that you happen to be in, and you find out online that people hate you. Like, there are these 2 people or 4 people in your congregation, or 3 people in your group of parent teachers or whatever that hate you. Even if it was one person, women have the uncanny ability to let that gnaw and eat at us. It doesn't matter if there are 10,000 that love you. All you can remember is the one that hates you. And you are trying to think about, what did I ever do? What did I say? Is that just me, or do you act that way too? You see, that thing that the enemy uses to bombard you clouds out all the good and just brings to your forefront all the bad. I know, because that happens to me. So you find yourself focusing on the one that hates you rather than those that love you. Your response as a human naturally is to become saddened, depressed, bitter, and then you go through a range of emotions that really may first begin with anger or begin with sorrow, but eventually, if you don't deal with that, it just stays that way. It festers, and it causes your irresistibility to fade. Pretty soon you're wondering, do they have grounds for what they're thinking? Are they right? Am I really what they say I am? You know, and that, I promise you, is a trick of the devil. That's how he cripples you. That's how he steals your joy. That's how he causes you to be an ineffective preacher girl. So if you know that your altitude is supposed to be love, then hear me, preacher girl, it's how God has taught me to get out of those slums. Right? And I don't even know how to get this across to you with the urgency that I feel in my spirit right now for this. The first thing that you want to do, if it's available to you, is take a small step outside of your depression, outside of your bitterness, outside of your hatred, outside of whatever it is they've caused you to feel. And that may be as easy as calling somebody, your husband, your best friend, a sister, somebody you know that can help lift your spirit. Now notice, they can't cure you. They can't take that away, because even if they make you feel good for a moment, tonight it's going to come back. But a small step in the right direction is better than no step at all. You listen to me. You get where somebody can encourage you in the Lord. And even if that is a teeny tiny step, listen to what happens. It goes from depression to sadness. You might say, well, who wants that? Sadness is better than depression, right? And you might see that as a failure, but irresistibility says, you know what? That's altitude. That's a little bit better. And then you could go from sadness, and you tell yourself, Lord, you know how in the beginning when we had alignment, we're lining up ourselves, we're saying, okay, they're saying that I'm this person, but you said I am this person. So you may not go from sadness to joy. You may not just flip the morning into dancing. So you went from depression to sadness, and then your sadness becomes an ache or a tear or complacency or I don't care. But even I don't care is a step above sadness. So what you're doing, one small step at a time, is you're saying, God, as I line myself up with you, as I get that attitude of gratitude, I am gonna get higher in this. So what you're asking the Spirit to do is that thing that you thought that you've pushed out now, you're saying, Spirit of God, reframe that for me. Change that for me. Thank you for giving me context. Thank you for showing me what you really feel. And let me tell you something. Before you know it, that complacency turns into ignorance. Like, what happened again? Who said what? And then that ignorance will turn to comfort. And then that comfort turns to mild happiness, and then that happiness turns to joy. You notice we can't just go from depression all the way to joy, but small steps, little things, any step in the right direction brings you closer to love. And then what God does is ultimately increases your ability to care for even those that hate you, which is why Jesus can say to love them that hate you. You know, and I know that Right now it feels like if you don't know how to do that, but preacher girl, I'm telling you, he is able to do that. Just don't punish yourself that you didn't have control over what people think. And if it's consuming you, if it's taking your joy away, then you ask God to reframe that thought in your mind so that your altitude can increase, and ultimately the result is love. And more than anything in the world, the most irresistible thing in the world is genuine love. If you love people, then people won't be able to resist you. It's the truth. On that note, I love you. I'm not just saying it. I take my time to do this because I love you. I feel like if God said to tell you something, and I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you're struggling with, and who's telling you what about yourself, but to your Abba, you're irresistible. You're worth so much that he can't help but stare at you and look in your eyes and wait for the moment that you just cry out to him. And he'll always, always feel that way. He was that way when you were in your mother's belly. Before he formed you in the womb, he knew you, he loved you, and he chose you. And if he's called you, then nobody can uncall you.